healthy businesses are not still. In order to have a successful business, you have to change.
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Luggage is in the overhead and we're all buckled in. Today's guest is Tori Signorelli, and I knew I wanted her on the show the minute I heard her story. Theater school in New York, life in Florence, a hedge fund, service design across Europe, and now she's at Alaska Airlines helping shape the guest journey with fresh eyes and, given that background, some seriously cool perspective. Tori's newer in the role, which I love. That means she's seeing things before all those filters kick in, those expectations, those baggage that comes when you're at a place for a while. And that theater background, it's not just a fun fact. It shows up in how she listens, she leads, and how she creates better experiences. Tori, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you, Rick. I'm really excited to be here. And it's true. I have had quite a squiggly career, right?
I cannot wait to get into that squiggliness. And thank you for joining us today bright and early out in the Pacific Northwest. It is going to be fun to go through that background and what you're doing today. And what you're doing today, I know it doesn't feel like it, but you're still relatively new there at Alaska Airlines. What's it been like stepping into that new CX role while the team is, well, honestly, still figuring things out and the business keeps moving?
I am quite new. Yes, I'm still, I think I just hit 5 months. So
congratulations.
It doesn't feel like it, but it is quite new. I have a tendency to be attracted to these high growth companies or in high growth moments. So it feels a lot like trying to jump onto a moving train.
Yeah.
It's challenging. It's not the first time I've been in that position. And I've really learned to go in with eyes open, ears open, to lead with curiosity and try to suspend judgment, because there's usually a lot going on, a lot of complexity to get your head around and your hands around. And at the same time, just be ready to jump in and contribute as quickly as possible, because there's a lot that needs to be done.
That's a really difficult balance for any company. You coming in and you've got experience, you know things, but you don't want to come bull in China shop, to cliche this a bit. Yeah. There's something though about the airline industry that attracts me because I just love it. And it's so complex, right? To think that you're dealing with an experience that involves everything from baggage handling to a digital app to safety in the skies. How have you achieved your sort of almost internal learning program as you're trying to keep this experience moving forward?
It is complex. It is. And airlines, there was an incredibly large scale operation at play. And it's not even just the operation, like you mentioned, there's the digital aspect as well, which is a whole system in itself. So it's a lot about, you can model it on paper, you can model it in your head, but it's like building that model, right? You've got to build the model and see how all the pieces fit together. And the best way to do that is to get out and immerse yourself. So one thing that I find is great about the onboarding into the airline industry is that it's a physical and immersive environment.
Yeah.
It does make it a little easier than some others I've been through, like e-commerce, which is global logistics that I couldn't see, right? I had to...
You weren't getting on container ships out in the Pacific?
Exactly. They don't send you around like a package when you're onboarding in e-commerce, right? So, it's at least in airlines, what I love about it is so service oriented that you can go and experience the service. And Alaska is like one of the warmest, most inviting environments I've ever been welcomed into. And so that's really helped a lot. It's also really cool to go into airports in a new way. I've been under the airport in baggage and seen all of how the bags move around, and I've been out on the ramp. And so, it's really been a cool and immersive experience.
You just ensured that anybody listening to this is thinking the next time that I see an airline CX role or know somebody there and it's opening up, applications are going to come flooding in.
It is cool. Yeah.
And I know that I would love to have that kind of immersive experience. Well, let's talk about that experience, because one thing you did say to me when we were talking before the show, it stuck with me. It's this idea of do no harm to the guest experience. And I want to get out of the poster version of this and into what it looks like in practice, especially
Mhm.
during these moments of integration or
Mhm.
operational change.
Mhm. Oh, the concept of doing no harm is, I think it's baked into any CX role.
Hmm.
There's a lot of focus, and there's always a focus, and kind of the most exciting elements of customer experience tend to be when you're doing transformation and you're designing and you're building from scratch. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's so cool. But the truth is, like, that design, whether it's actually triggered by the design team and what your team is trying to change within the organization, or it's driven by other business decisions, that change creates disruption.
Hmm.
It has to. Change is messy, right? We
Hmm.
can't actually avoid that.
Right.
So it means that we really have to have a practice in place to have our eyes on the ground and understand what that change means to guests, to customers as they're moving through the experience. Because what you don't want is for that mess to be their problem, right? We want that mess to remain behind the scenes and under the surface. So in practice, there's a need to have dedicated eyes
Hmm.
on the journey at all times, from what you might call a journey management point of view or from a continuous improvement point of view, but
Hmm.
basically dedicated resources that are looking at the journey, and myself included, on a daily basis, looking at the signals coming in from all of your listening posts and ensuring that you know what is actually landing.
Hmm.
And some of that is that day to day, and some of it's proactive. So you really have to know your business, you have to know your journey. Mapping it helps, but there's lots of ways to map out a journey. But
Yeah.
knowing the journey and knowing where your kind of sensitive areas are, and where,
Hmm.
and really understanding the business as well, is critical. So you know when a business decision or when a design decision is going to impact what part of the journey, right? And then you can prepare with the data that you have and have an eye on it on a regular basis and be looking for any signal that your your mess is showing, right?
Right. Right.
So I think, for us on a day to day, that looks like monitoring dashboards. It looks like monitoring touch points and like aligning those, all of our dashboards align to the actual journey. So we have our a touch point level point of view
Hmm.
on our journey on the day to day, week to week. And we are surfacing any proactive concerns where we might say,
Hmm.
hey, this change could influence the journey in this way, XYZ. This is what we recommend we do to protect it. Or it could mean, hey, we've taken these steps, these mitigations, and we're still hearing a little bit
Right.
of something we need to change. And it's a matter of like being ready to adapt, collaborating with teams that will have the on the ground, hands on influence
Hmm.
over that moment, and finding solutions really in the moment. So it's very dynamic.
It's reminding me of something that I've talked about a lot, and that is the idea that, well, customer experience is very outside in. You just described. We're listening to the signals. We're trying to get that outside in, especially at an airline. So much of it is inside out, the business process, the operational, the execution. How are you blending those two worlds together to make sure, like you said, do no harm? Well, a lot of the do no harm is make sure that this process doesn't break with the introduction of a new loyalty program. I'm making that up, but a new something that comes in to make
New
sure that the
things.
basics don't break.
Yeah, new technologies. I mean,
Yeah.
there's things that have to be done, right? Healthy businesses are not still, right? And so in order to have a successful business, you have to change. The only safe place is nothing, is not to change at all, but without change you don't have growth. So it's an inevitable part of the job. And it just requires a system to manage and navigate it. That system requires not only that outside in view, and this is where I think, my team is currently evolving, and where I think the push has to be, even in the industry itself, is
Hmm.
not just about reporting what customers are saying. That's not enough. You've got to be integrated into the organization, have those relationships with business owners, business leaders, and then drive for change. So that means sometimes, it can look different depending on the culture. I've learned not to assume that one way is going to work in every single business.
Right.
But in a business like an airline where there's an operation and there are metrics that are being monitored every day, you've got to tap into the systems that exist and link the guest experience, those guest experience metrics, to the business metrics so that the leaders understand how what they are driving influences and connects to the guest. And sometimes it's not a straight line. So there's some storytelling to be done.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
You talked about that, I think in your words, the squiggly background that you had. And I got to tell you, I don't usually see theater and hedge funds in the same resume. What about those two worlds taught you about people and operations that you now use today in your customer experience work?
It's such a good question, and one that I love to talk about because I am aware that not everybody has gone that exact path. I've yet to meet somebody else, actually. So, yeah. So, when I think back to theater, I know why I was attracted to it. I think there's a thread of just wanting to welcome people into a world. And so for me, I can understand from that point of view, like why it connects. But I think what I took away from it is even the more important thread, which is really, I kind of think of it as super teamwork.
Yeah.
There is no role in the theater that isn't critical, right?
Yeah.
An extra can influence the leading performance and can steal the show. And they say always, there's a kind of cliche, there's no small roles in the theater, only small actors and it's really true, but it's not just in the theater that's true, right? I look at it in all teams that every role is critical. It's not about hierarchy. It's about connectivity.
Okay.
It's about trust between team members, and it's about everyone showing up and doing their part. And without it, like it doesn't go, right? And so linking that to customer experience, I mean, in a role like mine where I own very little of the experience, but I orchestrate it all, it's kind of like being a conductor of an orchestra or like the orchestra or a choir where I don't really touch the instruments, right?
Right.
I don't get to decide how the instrument is played. That is for the musicians to do. It's for the business leaders to own. It's for the front line to deliver every single day. But I'm the eyes and the ears, and I'm the one that can help connect all of those musicians to actually make music together. And so for me, it's a very personal and very kind of visceral connection to the work because I lived it. And I know like in my bones that that's what works. And that's what we're really doing here. And so it's had a really incredible influence.
Boy, I can really see that. And that idea of the conductor and the orchestra and the idea of the no small roles, that makes a ton of sense to me. I'm curious, what about the hedge fund side of it?
I was in an HR role at the hedge fund. So it was definitely more of an attraction to the people systems, right? How does this organization fit together? How do you get the right players? So I learned, and I sat on a trading floor. It was intense, but I sat on the trading floor with some incredible business leaders, very high power, high status business leaders that really knew what they were doing. And I learned an incredible amount from them, including how to get the right people in the right roles and the critical nature of getting the right talent in the right place and how to harness energy. There's a tremendous amount of energy on a trading floor. You've got high power, big egos. How do you harness that for the good of an organization? And I got to see that live. and it's had a great influence as well
I
on
can
the way that I
imagine.
lead. Yeah.
I can imagine. And as you said, the high power, the high energy, I'm actually visualizing an airplane engine, and there's some harnessing of that as well. I realize now I have taken the metaphor and stretched it just a little too thin here. And so I want to ask you something different, and that is this idea of living away from your home
Mm.
country for a period of time. I've always fantasized about doing that. I've only lived it through travel, never truly deeply expatting. You lived across Europe, Florence, London, Portugal. How has that global perspective shaped the way you think about customer culture now?
I will tell you, it was a really formative years. I spent almost 7 years in Italy. So
Wow.
yeah, and I did not speak the language when I arrived.
Okay.
So
That's a
for
challenge.
that, yeah, it was a real challenge. And it definitely taught me, I mean, when you don't speak the language, you have to find other ways to communicate and observe your surroundings and figure out what is going on. And
Mm-hmm.
so it definitely helped me build skills in reading nonverbal cues and reading a room and
Mm.
understanding and really being hypersensitive to the emotional state of what is happening, what's happening around me and all the different dynamics. I think that's a skill I still use today as
Yeah.
I'm, reading a situation. We're bringing in new information from a guest point of view, which may be somewhat disruptive, or it may be, something people are not excited to deal with on a day-to-day basis as they're busy working on other things. And so understanding and having empathy for those in those moments is really critical. And the empathy part, you can't really leave your country, leave your culture, and not be forced in a way to take on and really roll around in someone else's point of view, right?
Yeah.
You get to kind of zoom out
Mm-hmm.
and rise above these kind of constraints of boundaries and culture and my background, or my nation and your nation and my country, my city. And
Yeah.
you really see things at their foundation and like who we are as people, um, and what we want and what is driving our behaviors are all very, very similar. And it really forces that into perspective. When I later lived in London and was working very closely and spending a lot of time in Portugal, that ability to really see the point of view of a different culture and not make assumptions that everyone is thinking like you, it's critical to driving change and really bringing other people with you through change.
Tori, I think you encapsulated in those last few minutes why travel is the birthing ground of empathy. Why I would almost joke that when people say, hey, maybe you can't learn empathy, you're born with it. But I guarantee that shove anybody in a culture like you're describing and have them experience 7 years starting without understanding the language,
Mm-hmm.
travel and living abroad, that really develops empathy. One thing
And
that traveling also develops is fatigue. And some of those flights and trips, I imagine you have had some significant fatigue. And
yeah.
it has been nice to stop off in the lounge when you've had that opportunity. And I invite you to do that with me today. We're going to move quickly here and have a little fun here in the first class lounge. What is a dream travel location from your past?
I took an amazing road trip with my husband while we were living in London because Europe was
Nice.
so close. We went to the Basque area of Spain and San
Oh, wow.
Sebastian
Yeah.
and road tripped through Spain, through the north of Spain and into
Mm-hmm.
France.
Mm-hmm.
And that was incredible. It was just
Yeah.
a food and wine fest, like our
That's it.
own personal food and wine tour that went on for a couple of weeks. It was incredible. Yeah.
We're done here. Episode over. Everybody get in your car and head out to Bosque for food and
I
wine.
highly recommend it. Yes.
Well, I haven't been to that region yet. So what is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
Japan. It is the top of my list.
Mm-hmm.
It is a culture that I have been fascinated and interested in from a service point of view for a very long time. I am really fascinated by their service culture, their
Yeah.
design ethos, and their food. coming back to the food. So much about travel for me is about the food. And
Preach.
they really have an incredible,
Yeah.
incredible cuisine.
Yeah.
So yeah, top of the
It
list.
is, again, longtime listeners, you saw me. Even if you're listening and you're not watching, you saw me smile because Japan continues to come up, and there's a reason why Japan continues to come up, because it is such an amazing place to go. And you're right about the food. Well, Tori, since you brought it up, what is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Always hard for me to pick one thing, but
Of course.
oysters are my favorite food. I've been saying for a long time.
Wow.
And now that I live in the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest, I am in like oyster heaven here. So yeah, I love
That's
oysters. I love them
fantastic.
cooked any possible way. I love them raw, cooked, everything, baked, fried. Yeah.
You chose a food that I think would be the answer to this question for many people, and that is, what is something growing up you were forced to eat but you hated as a kid?
So I don't remember being forced to eat
Mm.
anything, and I don't remember really not liking very many things, but I do remember eating a lot of broccoli. And I didn't really want to eat the broccoli. And even as a kid, most kids don't. And so I would eat the butter off the top of the broccoli, like when no one was looking.
Oh, I
And it's
like
like,
that.
I don't have any butter on my broccoli. And then like I would avoid the broccoli as much as possible.
Oh, that's spectacular. Butter is broccoli as a butter delivery system. That's the way to handle it as a kid. I love it. Well, Tori, it's time for us to leave the first class lounge. What is one travel item, not including your phone, not including your passport, that you will not leave home without?
I always travel with a journal and a pen because I find, one, I like to journal no matter where I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's like for my mental health, it's a creative outlet. It's very important. But when I travel, I get really inspired and I want to remember those stories. And I find, there's more space. There's headspace when you're in a new place and time on the plane. And that's when I get most of my inspiration. So I always have a journal and a pen.
Tori, I love what you said there about you get more headspace. There's something, heck, we do it even just in our own little worlds, that if I'm creatively blocked, just walking around the house, walking around the block can unlock that. The idea of travel giving you that headspace and making sure you've got the journal and the pen to capture those creative thoughts coming in. Imagine a lot of that is part of service design. And I want to talk to you about service design. You've had that opportunity of building from scratch. You've also had the opportunity of redesigning something major. When you're doing either of those, how are you bringing the rest of the organization along with you?
It's a great question. And it goes back to that orchestration, the relationships.
Mm-hmm.
One, I think you've got to have the relationships. You've got to have the trust with the leaders and not just the leaders, with the teams around you.
Right.
To know that you are bringing a perspective that they can't see themselves because they're heads down in their own work, as they should be, right? So focus a lot about bringing data to the table, guest perspective and guest voice to the table, customer voice to the table. So that, and I use a lot of visuals and connection tools like blueprints and maps, so they can see how their part influences the other teams, how their part influences the total guest experience. And in doing that, it allows people to occupy a space of ownership so that you can co-create, because it doesn't matter how well you design. You can design the most beautiful service in the world, but without the lower half of your service blueprint being healthy, without those teams being bought in, and without their processes running smoothly, that service will never fly. So that sense of ownership, not just of the design of their part, but of the execution.
Yeah.
And that ownership, it starts at the design phase, and it starts with that connectivity and that investment in building an understanding and kind of a common view of the total experience.
I'm really glad you brought it back. It is not as the same words, but in that idea of execution and process, because that the upper half, if you will, of the graph does look to be the sexier part, the more exciting part. All of that falls completely flat on its face if the gritty stuff doesn't actually take place. Tori, you've got an experience at a prior company, Farfetch, where you built a team from the ground up. You're now in this new environment at Alaska Airlines. Thinking back to your past, knowing where you are today, what are you bringing with you from that experience? And well, just as importantly, what are you not bringing with you?
Yeah, so building from the ground up in a high growth global environment definitely, it was an incredible experience where I learned a lot about leading through complexity, creating clarity for teams, for not just teams, but stakeholders in times when things are very hectic and it's very hard to see the bigger picture. I do bring that with me. The number one thing I think that's kind of a learning from that experience is that dot connecting work of customer experience is very easy to live in the background as kind of invisible glue. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but it is a tough thing for maintaining your value and sharing value of the work, because invisible is hard to sell, right? So that's one thing I learned. The one thing that I'm carrying away that I'm doing differently is actually kind of forcing the work into the spotlight, which means speaking up in bigger venues, taking the opportunity to walk into the spotlight, bring the guest feedback, for the good, the bad, the ugly, into the bright white spotlight for all to see and for the work to be done in a much more kind of public forum with a lot more visibility, which I think it's healthy for the CX team and the CX practice, but it's also, it creates a forum and a place for more collaboration and for more people to get involved, which is, I think, what the work really needs, right? It can't be done in a vacuum. It has to be done in collaboration with a lot of other teams. And so pushing for that visibility means that you catch things faster when you're moving in a direction that could be risky and you just wouldn't know without the input of another team. And it forces collaboration, it forces accountability, and it brings the work from under the surface and into a more critical business role.
That's it. We're stopping right there. I love how you capture that. And certainly I love that part about, hey, don't be afraid of the limelight. Sounds just like someone who came out of theater, right? Because it doesn't matter. Well, I guess it does matter to some degree that there was a victory, but it's not sustainable if folks don't know about it and aren't going to celebrate it and use that as motivation to take it forward. Tori, that was absolutely spectacular. If folks wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and your approach to customer experience, what's the best place for them to find you?
I have a website if they want to find me there. That it's torisignorelli.com. And I'm always available at my email address as well at hello@torisignorelli.com.
Awesome. I will get the website there in the show notes. Tori, it was a great flight with you today, if I will. It really is helpful to understand what it is to really chew on building an experience, both the design, the outward looking, but then the inward, the execution, and then closing it there with the idea of, but make sure that folks know about it. It's pretty important. I enjoyed it today, Tori. Thank you for being on CX Passport.
Thanks so much, Rick. It was really fun.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.